Hey, what's going on, guys? Felix here from Podcasting Secrets. I am waiting outside of Starbucks on a Sunday, and today I want to talk to you about getting past the creative block to create enough podcast content, to get past this being stuck on knowing what kind of content to create, on being worried about getting started because you're not sure if you can create enough content around the topic or niche you picked. So I went on a joint bachelorette kind of weekend trip this past weekend for one of my good guy friends that I'm a groomsman for, and he's a music manager. He's a manager for a hip hop producer, and this is a kid. He's like 24 years old, and he's so prolific, right? He produces so many beats basically for different artists. He works with artists like Future. Well, I guess probably that's the biggest artist he works with, and it's super successful for especially for someone his age. And I wanted to learn more about the creative process that he goes through because he's very prolific. What I mean is that most beat makers will produce maybe like one beat a day, right? One beat a day, and that's it. But he's able to step it up and produce over 10 beats per day. And we'll learn more about his creative process. How can he produce so many more beats, produce so much more music than what's typical? And what he said, I think, is great advice, and it applies in certain situations. He said that the way that he's never been stuck in a creative block before. He's been doing this for like 10 years, never had a creative block. And I think this is a concern, right? For a lot of people that are starting podcasts, they're not sure if they can create enough content. They're worried they might get stuck in this creative block. And I felt the same way, particularly with this setup that I have here, which is recording almost a daily, at least 5 times a week, an Instagram live / podcast that I talk about a specific topic. I was worried that I might run out of things to talk about. And what he talks about is that in his creative process, he doesn't get a creative block because he just doesn't think too much about it. He doesn't think too much about the end result. He doesn't think too much about the thing that he's going to be creating. He doesn't think too much about the end products. And I agree to this to a certain extent. I agree to this depending on the situation you're in. I do believe that you should be planned, and you should prepare and understand what kind of content you want to create. You want to plan ahead. You want to think about it. You want to be able to choose a podcast episode topic, for example, that is well researched, that your audience actually wants, that you actually want to talk about, that you feel that you have an expert that can talk about, or you feel like maybe you can cover that subject. So you want to plan that at least. You want to plan that as much as you can. When I do agree with his advice is that when you have gone through that process but you still feel stuck, I think what he's getting at is just get in the process of creation. Get in creation mode, and creation mode is actually what will give you the juice to renew your creativity, to actually get you rolling again. And that's the most important thing, just to get rolling, and that's when you start getting creative. That's when you get past the block. I think a lot of times we get stuck in this block because we start thinking about, we have too many expectations. We think about, we need the episode needs to be a certain way, we need to pick a certain topic, is someone going to like this or not? You spend too much time thinking about the future that you don't really think about just getting the process of creating. So that's what I've learned about creating these like daily podcasts, daily episodes, is that I do some preparation. I try to think about what I want to talk about beforehand, of course. I try to think about ahead, a couple of days what I want to talk about. But sometimes I don't know what I'm going to talk about until like a minute before I get on. But I just think about in my head. I don't focus so much on the end result. Instead, I focus on just getting on here and putting out the content. And over time, it's gotten a lot easier. And I think the same thing with any podcast episode. As you just get in the process of creating, you get into that mode. You get it's like a muscle memory where you get better at getting into the mode of content creation. Once you get into that mode, you start getting creative and you start piecing it all together. But you can't do that if you spend too much time thinking about, am I being creative? Do I have enough content? Am I covering the right things? Just get in the mode of creating, get in the mode of putting out episodes, and you will get better at turning on this creativity. So that's what I agree with him when he says that don't think too much about it, meaning that don't obsess so much about what you're going to produce. Instead, focus more on the process of creating. Focus more on getting on the podcast, getting on the mic, getting in front of people on Instagram Live, whatever you're doing. Focus more on getting into the mode of the process, getting into the creating process, that is. So hopefully it helps you out. If you're worried about starting your podcast, you're not sure you're going to cover the right topics, you're not sure you're going to have enough content to cover, just focus on how can I set up my podcast in a way, how can I create a lifestyle, create a schedule where I can produce every day and get in the mode of creating content every day. So hopefully it helps you out. And if you're thinking about once you create a podcast, once you get it rolling, how do you make money from it? It's important conversation, important topic, because once you're able to get some money rolling in, you can actually reinvest in it, and that makes it a lot easier to get into content creation mode, right? Because if you're every day, you have to edit each podcast, you have to post it everywhere, you have to get the guests, you have to organize all of it. It does take a lot out of the steam out of the creation process. So rather than focus your attention on that, you should make enough money from your podcast so you can reinvest and hire people, hire or buy apps, buy services that can help you get into the creation mode more easily. And only way to do that is to be able to focus on monetizing your podcast. And how do you do that? We covered all in the Profit for Podcasting course, where not only do I talk about what I have done, we went to get the top podcasters out there and we asked them how did they monetize their podcast, how did they get to the point where they built a business around their podcast, specifically how would they get their first $1,000 per month. And if you're stuck, if you're thinking about how to monetize a podcast that maybe you already have, and maybe you're thinking about starting, if you already have a podcast, you definitely want to think about monetizing, because you can outsource, you can hire for things that you don't want to do. And if you're thinking about starting for a podcast for the first time, you also want to think about monetization, because it's super important. If you get it right from the start, it makes things a lot easier. So if you want to learn more about that, just get the Profit from Podcasting course over at podcastingsecrets.co/profit. Hope that helps you out, and talk to you guys soon. Take care. Bye-bye.